Yo, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode. It feels like it's been a while since we recorded. It hasn't been that long, but it feel like it has. Maybe it's a news cycle. I don't know. Maybe it's just life. I don't know what it
That
is.
is real. That is
It,
we correct me if I'm wrong. We recorded last week, right?
We
yeah,
did.
definitely. Yeah,
What it
Yeah,
might
yeah.
be,
but
Why
it,
does
it
it take so
was
long?
it's
it normally be in the front of the week, right? And I think this week we just pushed it back a little bit. So maybe that's what it is.
yeah, that's a part of it. It it's just I think we were talking about this like right before we started mm, the pod, but things are weird. One, the news cycle is weird. This
Hmm.
is gotta be the fastest news cycle. We try to get topics to talk about. We even have automations, whether with Claude or with Grok or whatever. I have mine run in the morning and I have mine run an hour before the pod. And even still, we'll record the pod and 10 minutes later, some shit will come out and just take all the air out the room. And it's just, it's, we live in a different time in regards to media, and that probably does affect some other things too, but who knows?
So I want to go ahead and just get into it because I mean you're talking about media, and so I want to give a very tangible example, kind of leading into one of our topics. But one of the things that we were going to chat about that today was going to be the Fable 5 and Mythos. The new models from Ectopic that got banned, recently by the government. And before we kind of get into that topic, I don't know if people are familiar with Kalshi. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it, but I don't know if people are actually starting to make bets and things of that nature, trades. But at the end of the day, it's a prediction market. It's binary. It's yes or no. Will this happen? And so one of the trades that they had up was, when would Mythos and Fable 5 come back online? And so they had different weeks. So like it was like, will it be back online by like, June 20th? So literally, this upcoming weekend, July 1st, July 10th. And then, there were different odds, which was impacted by like how people were like betting. So I took the position of 35 cents. So essentially that was being applied that there was a 35% chance that it would come back up by July 1st. I took it. It went all the way up to 80 cents, bro. So basically, I doubled my money.
Jeez.
This was yesterday, and I think I put this in the group chat. This was just
You did.
yesterday, bro.
You
Something
did.
told me to take half, like take sell half of my amount, and so I did. Took some of the earnings pocket. Why the fuck did I wake up today, bro? And I get on Twitter, and it's like, head of international director of Anthropic says in Seoul that they've been working with the U.S. government and Fable should be back online in the next few days. When I say that 80% went down to 20% in the span of an hour,
You sold it. You sold it at the right time, it sounds like.
I did. But I think to your point of like how fast things
Yes.
are moving,
Yes. Yes. You gotta be on top of
that
that
was just
stuff.
wild to me. That was just wild to me because it wasn't even
Yeah.
24 hours. It was literally maybe 12.
Well, that's what you call discipline though, because you could have waited potentially w and leaned on the greed of maybe potentially making some more on that bet, but you decided to, "Hey, let me take some chips off the table," and just that quickly, you got rewarded for your discipline there.
Wait,
Yeah,
how do
yeah,
these
great.
prediction markets work? I've never actually used them before. I'm unfamiliar with them, but I've never actually used them, like Polymarket and stuff. Like, how do they work?
Yeah, yeah. So at the end of the day, basically all like contracts are binary. So it's a yes, no answer. Nothing more than that. And then for some contracts, there may be a single option, such as, say, for example, who will win the NBA finals, Spurs or Knicks, right? And then you can vote on the yes or no for either of those teams. And so, say, for example, for something like politics, where it's like who's going to be the Democratic or Republican like nominee in 2028, there's like 50 different options, right? So it kind of varies there. But the yes and no essentially are implied probabilities based off of how the market is betting, right? So if more people are, leaning into the yes, you're going to see that implied probability kind of like go up. And I think prediction markets really started taking off over the 2024 election because they predicted Trump winning the election way before, to the point that I believe it was the FBI that went and arrested the founder of Polymarket the day after the election because it was like, did he rig this election? Like that's how spot on these have like become. And each contract is between 0 cents and $1. So yes and no always adds up to $1. So say for example, when I placed a bet on 30 cents, if that no actually turned out to be right, then essentially I'm making 70 cents, to match that dollar or whatever. And then each contract is equivalent to kind of like $1 or whatever. But when like, bro, y'all know this because, we've been testing our models because we're just, some smart guys.
Yeah.
But when I have Claude, because I gave it the Kalshi API, bro, there are 26, I think it was like the last time I checked, there are 26,000 different markets that are on Kalshi that you could bet on. And it's across, economics, finance, sports, politics, culture, you name it. And there's this really good, I think his name is called like Dahmer. And he's the one who became kind of famous after the Trump election because he ended up making, I think, like $3 million off a trade he made off that. But his whole approach that he's been trying to like push, and I think that's literally what I applied here was he was like, you don't need to wait for the outcome to make some money. All you have to do is
True.
find where the odds
True.
might be lower than what you think they should be. And so that's why I took the Anthropic bet at 30% because I'm like, when I went and did the research, I'm like, based off the research, usually these type of things take 2 to 3 months. I don't think this is going to happen in a week. And
Mm.
so, but shit, the news had it differently this morning.
Man,
Yeah.
that's a good win for you. A good, yeah, like Rodney said, good thing you took some bread off the table, right?
Yeah, man. So, but
Yeah. It's a risky. It's a. It's. There's so many thoughts that came to my mind, or maybe, but I can distill them down into two things. I would say the first one is that for most people, this is just going to be no different than just throwing your money away. For most people, I think most people, if they do this, they'll probably lose all their money. And then I think, unless they had like some like private information. Now, the second thing I was thinking was how these things could theoretically affect real world outcomes. So, hypothetically, if you have on a prediction market, poly market, or Kalshi, you have the presidential election and the market is saying Trump is going to win, right? There may now be this huge financial incentive for Trump to win that did not exist before, which may affect the behaviors, which then affects the outcome of Trump winning or losing. And that's very interesting, right? Like that's a very interesting dynamic. I'm not saying whether or not it should be legal or not, or whether or not you can directly prove any of the correlations, but you would have to think that if there's $100 million market, maybe I don't know how big it was on poly market, but let's say 100 million. There's a lot of people who have a vested interest, and those people may start doing all types of shit in the background, including making sure that their family and friends vote a certain way, including making sure that if depending on how much power they have, how much influence they have, hey, y'all should vote this way, y'all should vote this way, da, 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 da. That could really that stuff could really affect real world outcomes. And you can apply that to anything. And I think that's one of the reasons why sports betting had to be that there had to be some very strict things that people could bet on,
Mhm.
given the fact that you don't want sports betting to affect the outcome of games based on what people are betting on, etc. So of course there will always be some level of that, but in sports it's different though, because there's obviously rules, but for something like an election, that's very much so a lot more vague. And if those markets did affect an outcome, I mean, is it much different than billionaires or
Well,
millionaires
I don't
backing? Like, what do you
think this
think?
was no, this might have been a year ago or maybe even a year before that, so 2 years ago. But if you remember when the Israel and the I'm forgetting basically the war in Gaza. I'm forgetting the name of the group or whatever. But
Hamas.
there Hamas. Yes. On Poly Market, there were, and that's the thing people need to understand. Kalshi is legal in the United States. Poly Market is banned. And it's for this very reason because on Poly Market, I believe there were like different bets that were placed around like the number of people that would die in the conflict or like who would die in the conflict. And so people were like, is this going to incentivize somebody or a certain group to go, kill more people to make that happen? And I genuinely, I mean, maybe this was an anomaly, but bro, if y'all remember, what was this? Just last week when the Knicks and Spurs were playing, and what was it? Game 4, where OG had the tip in. I kid you not. I'm on Kalshi. I'm literally going back and forth with Cloud on like, should I do this or not? Because I knew it was going to be an emotional bet, but something told me like, take the chance. And literally, it was 98-2. So Kalshi gave the Spurs 98% chance to win in two. So you would have made a bag. I kid you not. At that moment, bro, before the shot was taken, there was $100 million. That was the total size of that market at the time. By the time he had took that shot, I think it had got up to like $400 million. And that was in the span of what, maybe a minute? There's so much money going into these prediction markets, into just like these different types of, events. And I
I
genuinely do
can't
think,
believe I can't even believe
no,
this
but
is legal.
You're
Honestly.
right, right. This has to be like brand new based off some new laws or something. Because this
It is
idea,
100% because
this
and
is
the
like the
reason why is
easiest
because
idea.
you remember this a long time ago when Delane and I were working on the first version of Play Versus,
Yes,
right? The whole premise of that version was that, me and you want to compete. You put up money, I put up money. We play a video game. We verify the results. Whoever wins gets the pot. We take a split. But again, it's just ability to kind of bet on your gameplay. And even at that time, there was a lot of conversation about the legality of it. There was tight laws around betting and things like that. And so there was no like
timing.
it's just crazy to me now that like you can literally bet on anything.
It's kind
Literally
of
anything.
annoying.
literally,
It's kind of annoying. It could because 'cause it's really just timing, right? Because I remember, I do remember that concept when you guys were working on that, and then I remember having that idea or just that general idea in the form of different form factors, and the thing that always stopped me or, you guys or whoever it was that we knew that it was illegal. Like, that's the only thing, like, and so to see Poly Market, I'm not mad, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's just such a you didn't do anything but, like, launch something when it became legal, right as it became
Time,
legal,
yeah. Yeah. That's it.
and yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
that's
That's
all
all
that
they did.
happened. That's all they did, and which is fire for them because I love how I be watching the studio. They have a Poly Market studio which looks crazy. It's they have it set up like in a sports center type of way. Really cool. I think they call it monitoring the situation, something like that. So it's pretty funny, and I think it's culturally has gotten to a high level because I think right now a lot of people are in a weird space. So sports betting and prediction markets, they're bigger than they should be. I think that's probably not a good sign as far as like where culturally everybody's at. But
well, did
yeah,
y'all see? Did you see Deion Sanders recently spoke out about what's happening with the Texas Tech quarterback? Have y'all been following
no,
that?
what do you say? What do you say?
No.
So the Texas Tech quarterback, I believe he's a transfer. So I believe he was like a big time transfer into Texas Tech recently this year. And, they paid him a bag. They paid him a bag. Turns out my man's got caught betting on his own game. And so,
Wait, so
and
what?
so
So what do you say? So what? So what? Yeah, what? Yeah,
basically, I mean, I think Dion, he obviously was saying that, the consequences are the consequences is wrong or whatever. But I think he did really share some context around like with NIL things of that nature, just the nature of college football just changing. These student athletes are just kind of vulnerable, to this. And he was like, he's the one that just happened to get caught, but don't think that all these other
Yeah.
players aren't out here
Yeah.
doing it
I
too.
mean, yeah, of course. Don't think that. Don't think, yeah, don't be slow.
So
That's a tough thing, right? Like I think it's easy to say they shouldn't be allowed to bet, but I'm like, it's difficult if everybody else around them is making money off of the game. I mean, and technically they are as well, right? With these NIL deals up until recently, right? Because for a long time they were not able to make money off of it.
yeah.
I
It's
mean,
tough.
they're
It is
going to use
tough.
the tools. I mean, what you expect?
I would say it's sad. I would say it's sad because unfortunately for these, I don't know what the consequences are, but I think they probably have to be zero tolerance. They probably have to be zero tolerance. I would probably want to give them another chance, but I think it can get tricky if you're not real harsh on the consequences.
Well, take this. So my man was a senior, and he was predicted. He was predicted. I think he was like a top 5 pick in the transfer portal or top 5 recruit in the transfer
It's just
portal.
never
He
worth it. I understand though why at his age though he would do it, but it's obvious it's not worth it in like in the long run of his. I can understand why he's probably what younger than 23. I can
yeah.
understand why he would take that, but I don't know if it's zero tolerance or not. I think it probably should be. Otherwise, it'll get out of control. Because if people start feeling like, oh well, shit, I could do it once or twice and they'll let me slide, then it'll run rampant. So like like the play like young guys they gotta think that there's no tolerance.
Hold on, I just looked this up. So yeah, he was a backup quarterback at Indiana, and he placed 40 bets on them last year, and he used his family and friends accounts to try to dodge detection.
How did they catch him?
He think so he think that's all he gotta do.
Bro, you come up with some different names.
Right. Not connected to you. Nobody and also nobody can know. Nobody can know. Your
That's
family
what I'm like.
can't
How did they
nobody can
verify it?
know.
Did a family member who was doing it with him snitched on him or something?
It's probably
No,
somebody talking, man.
let's see. No, the sports book. The sports book flagged it to the NCAA and Big 12.
Same last name,
Uh,
probably. That's dumb.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
so
that's true.
dumb.
They
He's
got.
dumb.
I didn't realize how sophisticated these sports books were with like all these monitoring systems they have, because they do be flagging a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm sure a lot of stuff gets through that they don't flag, right? But
Probably some engineer
I ain't
internally
gonna lie. If we're
eh,
just keeping the stat,
came up with
that's some hoe shit, really.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
y'all couldn't just mind y'all business.
I
Because
feel you.
let's not
I
act
feel
like
you.
he's
I
the
feel
only.
you.
no,
But you gotta understand. You gotta
they
understand.
probably get a bonus internally. The more you
Yeah, you
can,
gotta
the more
understand. Yeah,
times
you gotta
flag,
understand.
you get a bonus.
It's somebody else's job to make that improvement. So it's like it's two
Yeah,
forces. It's two forces.
yeah. It's
I
some
probably
product manager
yes,
and
exactly. If there's
engineer.
a product manager that's coming up like, hey, this is the perfect idea. I wouldn't pick up that ticket personally. I leave that ticket alone. Somebody else can pick up that ticket. I remember once there was when I was working at Berg, there was the product manager came up with this feature called community something, community monitoring or community something. And essentially what it was that the local governments were having issues with birds, right? And there's all these different types of issues. And essentially it was a way for riders to report other riders. So if you saw somebody else doing something like riding with multiple people or parking wrong or whatever it is, you could like take a picture or something like that. And I was just like,
And
so
telling them.
we're set. I was like, so we're creating a snitching feature basically. So that's what that's the core of this. That's the core of this. I wasn't a big fan of it. I think I might have did a little bit of something on there,
You didn't like it?
but I didn't like that feature, man. Nah, I didn't think it was one. I didn't think it was gonna work. So that was like I didn't think it was gonna work. But then two, I just thought that having people be out there like hall monitors. This is before people started calling people Karen and whatnot. Like having people out there like that, I didn't approve of that. But look, yeah, we should speaking of approval or just in general rules and whatnot. Last week, Anthropic had Fable banned. I think Brylan kind of mentioned that at the top of the podcast. Or Anthropic didn't have it banned. The government had it banned. And it's still currently not in use. No one can use Fable, not even for coding. And that started a bunch of discussions around whether or not that ban was truthfully banned on its merits, or is it banned from a politically motivated standpoint, or is it just banned because people don't like Anthropic, or maybe some people don't like Dario. It's all these different conversations that are in the air. But I just wanted to throw that out there that there are all these different narratives. And I think my stance has been clear as far as Dario, but I'll talk about Anthropic real quick. Anthropic as a company is a company that has employees that believe they're on the right side of the AI history. I believe that. I believe that the people who go to Anthropic in general have the belief that they are in this AI war, in this AI competition, in this AI game, that they're the ones who are taking the most effort and time into ensuring AI comes out as safely as possible. I believe that that's how the team operates. And in doing so, Dario and their marketing in general typically focuses on, pretty much always letting us know how dangerous the models are. So Fable is just a version of Mythos that has guardrails. And essentially a partner, I believe some branch at Amazon, but I don't know the exact details, reported a jailbreak that worked on Fable, and the government asked them to patch it. Anthropic said, we're not patching it. We can't patch it the way that you guys are saying to patch it. And also, there are other frontier models like OpenAI's model, GPT 5.5, etc., where these jailbreaks can work. And so this is not practical. We're not making any changes. And once they said that to the government, that's when the government banned them. And so I think that I understand where Anthropic is coming from, but I also think that it's a bit confusing how Anthropic wants regulators to operate, given the fact that they are the people in the whole race who is essentially saying, hey, look, we need to worry about all these jobs being wiped out. We're not going to stop anything we're doing, but we're going to wipe out all these jobs. So that's one. Two, we're not going to stop anything we're doing, but these are very dangerous. Number three, we understand there's a jailbreak there, but we can't do anything about that particular jailbreak. So we're not going to do anything at all. And so I think that Anthropic is a bit confusing. I think that going back to my original point, I think that I believe the people there believe that I think they genuinely are trying their best to create safe models, and they're genuinely trying to warn people about all these different dangers and whatnot. But I think they have put themselves in a position where they cannot truthfully or realistically live up to their aims. It's kind of like, I remember I was building a privacy and security product, and I always struggle with the simple fact that no matter how I spun it in my mind, if I brought this forward, it will protect journalists, dissidents, whistleblowers, etc., people in authoritarian governments, all these different things. But it would also protect criminals, predators, sexual offenders, drug dealers, etc. And I could not run from that. And so if I'm going to bring it forward, I have to essentially say, either I'm going to just own it. My opinion was either I'm going to own it, and which is what I had to do, or I'm going to make it seem like, hey, look, like there's multiple ways to look at it. And I think that they're in that position where, as good as they want to go about it, they have this technology that is going to be used both ways. And they struggle with that because when it really comes down to it, it's confusing how you want it to operate, because you have to acknowledge certain things. And so I don't want to go on a huge monologue because I think I've said too much already, but I understand the conflict and I understand, and I also believe that Dario himself genuinely believes some of the, like, I believe that he thinks that I think he's trying to do his best, but I think he's going to have a cognitive dissonance issue reconciling the fact that I cannot reasonably bring forth what I'm doing while also like he has two conflicting ideas in his head. And that's gonna be hard. I think this is gonna be hard to reconcile.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like in terms of the cognitive dissonance, I think they're gonna like end up facing. I think something that was like super interesting about this whole thing was leading up to the release of Fable. You had this narrative that was created over the span of maybe what, like a month or two, just in relation to like Mythos, and it just being this thing that was just going to wreck all of security, right? It created a lot of fear. And even for them to roll out Fable under the context of like it's still Mythos, but with guardrails, I genuinely don't know if that was like the right kind of like framing for that type of like
Right.
model, if I'm going to be honest, just because I feel like you walked yourself into a corner where when these vulnerabilities did start to come out, rather if it was, the Amazon, I also saw that I think it was like SK Hynix or whatever. It was one of those Korea companies. They also flagged to the US government some security concerns, which is part of the reason why the international ban came into place. And then you also, I think you called this out on the pod recently, Rodney, but it was around the fact that, developers started diving into the terms and services and saw that, their models were being downgraded. And so like I feel like this whole release honestly just was not like their best execution, if I'm going to be honest. And I do think it just gave leverage to the government, especially like I don't know if y'all saw this week the recent G7 summit of the seven top countries on the Western Hemisphere. But they also brought together all the AI leaders, and one of the things that they talked about was a UN type of committee that kind of governs AI internationally, and they want the US to kind of like lead it. And I think what was very interesting about that is like the mandate is really focused on a lot of those safety concerns, a lot of those like what could happen, not only on the labor side of things, but like on the cybersecurity side of things and things of that nature. And so I think just given that context, and once again, as a public, some of us are finding out about that stuff for the first time, but the government been knowing that this conversation around G7 was going to happen. They knew that that was going to end up being a topic, right? And so, yeah, I just feel like this was not their best execution, which is expected. You can't bat 100. You can't bat 100. So,
Could
yeah,
some of this be retribution from the government, though? We can't pretend that they didn't have the best relationship. It wasn't like they were the best of friends. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that doesn't help. That doesn't help the
yeah,
argument. It wasn't, if you buddy with Trump, maybe you get a different outcome. You know what I'm saying? But if you push back up against Trump, if you buck up against the system and you kind of give them the middle finger in a sort of way that kind of Dario did a couple months ago, when they had ran into some issues with the Pentagon, then I mean that we know that Trump has a long term memory when it comes to these things. We know his
that
administration
nigga's funny.
has a
He said
long term
long term
memory when it
memory.
comes to these things, and so I mean I hear what y'all are saying, and I get all that, but I guess the question is again, and this is kind of what I was saying in the group chat, which is, and this is easy, right? And this is oversimplifying it, but Dario and his team are saying that this jailbreak was a very narrow case, and to some degree, I'm paraphrasing here, wasn't really a big deal. Now, either he's lying or his team is lying, which is possible, right? They could be lying or misleading the public in terms of like the severity it is, or it wasn't. I tend to believe Dario and his team, especially considering how much they push safety and security and all of these things. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that if they had a known vulnerability that they knew, right, was severe, right? Severe, had potential for large scale impact, had the potential to impact their customers, big customers, small, anybody, right? Had the potential to damage their brand, right? I think if they realize that, then I think it'd be an obvious decision to fix that, right? So that's why I asked the question of like, okay, it could be everything that y'all are saying it is. It could be just a bad launch. It could be all those things. Or maybe it's just the government kind of saying fuck you to the first fuck you from Dario.
Yeah, it's a mix. In my opinion, it's a mix. You can't leave out the fact that they don't have the best relationship. Like you just see like that.
That's fair.
That's a factor. We'd be foolish to think that that doesn't. We'd be foolish to think that
100%.
that, that
100%.
what Dario has done is not playing a role here. We'd be foolish. So you make 100% a good point. I think the so I think it's a mix, and it's just a matter of how much, what percentage of what I don't know, but I think the thing is that the government didn't go looking for this problem; it came to them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It came to them, and so maybe they were harsh on the problem because hey, you said that this is a dangerous model, and you try to make us seem like we was the bad guys, so we're gonna go hard on this, and we're not gonna budge on this. And so maybe the correction was harder than it might have been. Maybe if they had played nice, they would have responded similarly, but maybe it would have got, it would already be back live already or something like that. If they were in better terms. But I just think that the government wasn't looking for this issue. Multiple people, multiple entities, I'm sorry, brought it to them. But I do think how they have pretty much stand like strong on, hey, fix this stuff.
Hmm.
That might be a bit of that might be a bit of
The take
yeah,
it or leave it kind of. That's because that's basically
basically.
what they did. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
either you fix it or not, and if not, then obviously you know how that's going to result.
I
Well,
like
I think
that. I like that. I like that.
something I do want to say is like I think kind of like 2 points, right? Because I think the government does need to be careful here, but I also understand they need to be careful. One, how long can this go on? And I think the specific piece is the fact that international employees at Anthropic, OpenAI, like international employees can't use this, right? And the reason why this is very important is because one, it can set a precedent across the industry. And then two, what we know is, what is it, 50 to 60% of these AI researchers are from China. And so if that's what this becomes, is like me as a researcher at OpenAI, Gemini, or whatever, I can't even use the top model that I'm even building. Why am I here? And so I do think there's like there
They're
is a
using it.
potential for talent, like, to go back home. And then this brings me to my second point, which is why, like, I can understand why you may want to hold out on this. And I think this is kind of to not OpenAI's, but Anthropic's position around, if you are trying to use Fable or Mythos to train, like, a next generation AI model, you won't be able to. Because I don't know if y'all saw the recent, GL 5.2 model that came out from ZAI. So it's an open source model. And it essentially surpassed Fable 5 on almost every benchmark I set. I think besides some of the like agentic coding benchmarks. And even on those, it was probably like maybe like 2 to 4 percentage points. So the range wasn't super crazy. And so Mark Andreessen, he put out a tweet earlier where I think Elon originally had said like, hey, by the end of 2026, China's open source models are probably going to be better than the US frontier. And then the ZAI guy came back and said sooner. And then Mark Andreessen came back and was like, this is something people need to really pay attention to. And I think all of this within the context of, you have enterprises now saying AI is expensive. You have enterprise. I saw a stat the other day that said literally in 2025, 28% of enterprises were using open source. Now this year, 63% of them are using it, right? Like to try to like cut costs or whatever. This is a very vulnerable period of time. I think for these companies in this situation and decision, I don't think it can be one of those that can be taken lightly. In my
I don't
opinion.
I don't think American companies will stop using these models. So I'm on the opposite end where I don't really I don't to me, I don't think what happens in open source will have any impact on these closed source models. Zero. Like, I think it'd be so nominal that, like, you just won't feel it. Like, I think at some point, these model costs are all gonna continue to go down. They already have started to go down, right? And this is a natural thing when technology comes out, is everybody gets so obsessed on costs that they forget the bigger picture. So to me, zooming out, this is one technology when you compare it against other technology that has gotten better and cheaper in a very constrained time. Even though people are still arguing about cost, the cost of running these models have gotten cheaper. The cost of using these models and deploying them have gotten cheaper. Now people are using them a lot more. There are some of these newer models like Opus and like Fable. I didn't get a chance to use Fable. I don't know what the pricing was, but I think it was double whatever Opus is.
Yeah, it's
Right?
expensive.
Again, brand new model, right? That's something they could have easily probably got that cost down by 50% in the next 12 to 18 months, right? Which will be huge, right? If it was everything that they said was, if you're able to reduce that model cost by 50% in the next year or 18 months, I mean, that's huge. Even if it took 24 months, which I don't think it would take that long. But I'm just,
Mhm.
my broader point here is like, I think these costs are going to come down. And so all this hoopla about open source, all that shit, I don't think that's going to matter, bro. There is way too much money in Anthropic, way too much money in OpenAI for them to die off to open source models. I just don't see that happen. If anything, somebody will create a fucking law to ban any Chinese models, and then U.S. companies won't have a choice. Then
That's
what? I
fair.
mean,
I think
then you'll just
I think
rely on U.S. open source models. I just don't see that. Again, that same argument is argued in software. Again, there's a lot of open source software, but there's a lot of non open source software that makes a shit ton of money and makes up a lot of the marketplace. So I don't really see how that changes here.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think these frontier models, they'll still have a place, but I think their place is going to become very specific and limited. I think you're going to end up seeing an 80-20 split where 80% of tasks that maybe have like 20% of the impact will be done by these open source models. I just genuinely believe that. Versus like for things that do require that type of frontier intelligence, which is going to be that 20%. I do still think, companies will use that, but these open source models are becoming pretty fucking good, bro. And we're like, let's be honest, for most tasks, you don't need Fable 5.
Of course, of
I
course,
think I
So
think we're I think we're but you know what people are not expecting is for these frontier labs to come out with local models. People are not
that's
expecting
real.
that, and just because they haven't done it doesn't mean they can't do that. And I understand why they may not, because right now they're in the business of renting models. They make a really good model and they rent it back. They rent it back to people, and so the way that you get access to it is through the internet. But open source models allow you to download a model, and as long as you have the hardware, you can run the model as much as you want. And there may be a world where they do a hybrid model and Anthropic and OpenAI and Grok or whatever, they come out with their own open source models for some reason. Maybe I don't know what their reason might be, but there's nothing stopping them from offering their own models. And maybe it might be useful because if you like a smaller version of their super powerful model, it might make you more likely to use their hosted model, which would probably cost more money or whatever the case is. So this stuff will evolve over time because there is a lot of cases in the real world that you are going to want this intelligence that doesn't require internet connection. You're going
100%.
to, and so you're going to want that. And there's probably a lot of cases like that, but so they should probably, so we'll see. The future is a little bit uncertain in that area. So I don't really know how that all plays out, but I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Now I wanted to say this, like, I mean, just kind of piggybacking off of what you're saying about the future being uncertain. I want to speak on something that's very certain. And yeah, I just think the writing is on the wall. SpaceX, man.
Yeah.
Obviously they recently had the IPO. Yeah, what, they're over $2 trillion now. Just recently made the acquisition with Cursor,
Almost 2.5
which
trillion, I think, at this point.
Then they bought
yeah. So
Cursor
let's
for
talk
40
about it.
billion.
60.
Let me see. They
Jeez.
are at
And hold up. I was reading today
2.4,
that
2.4 trillion right now. 2.44 trillion is where they are. So very close to being at 2.5 trillion. Go ahead, Brylan.
bro, I was reading this today. So Cursor, it's an all stock deal. They're getting the share price that was offered at the IPO to the bankers. Not the price
Mm,
that the stock went up
that's
to,
nice.
when they were actually on the stock market for retail, etc. But when they were in that private room doing these road shows, that price, which I think it was like 135, I think it was around or something like that.
Hmm.
They're getting paid, bro. They're getting
Elon
paid.
Elon wanted to give a number that they couldn't turn down. That's pretty much what that comes down to. Elon didn't want to have a negotiation. He just wanted to have it. He wanted what he wanted, and he had the money. He,
I wonder what the business case is for buying Cursor. Like, I get the success that Cursor has. I think they were doing what, $2 billion in
Two
revenue,
bill.
roughly,
Yeah.
about 2 billion in revenue, millions of subscribers. Obviously, revenue is probably compounding at what, 50%, 100% annually. Is probably some crazy growth curve. So I get that aspect of it, but to value it at 60 billion, again, this is like one of those. This kind of reminds me a little bit of like the WhatsApp purchase from
it
Facebook,
does. It does remind me of
where
that. Yeah.
initially it didn't really make sense, like why that was happening, but over time it was like, okay, obviously Mark is just ahead of the curve on like how this is happening. Plus, there was more international signal. So I haven't really looked too much into why Elon and team are making this particular decision. I mean, does Cursor have their own model?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
do,
they
bro.
do. Composer. It's good.
Composer.
It's good. It's
Yeah.
cheap. It's a cheap
It's
model.
Okay,
it's
so maybe
actually
I don't
like,
know. Maybe there's something there then.
yeah, honestly, I think it's a few things, bro. Like, just based off my research. I think it's one with, I think it was, they just rolled out Composer 3. But with Composer
Really?
2.5, yeah, they just rolled that
Shit.
out. But with Composer 2.5, that was essentially trained on an open source model. So Kimi 2.5, I believe it was, and then they just did some reinforcement learning, things of that nature. But it was able to match, I believe, like Claude, like Opus in terms of performance, but obviously at significantly like lower cost. And so there was that whole thing. I think the other thing too is like all these labs are chasing that recursive self improvement, and they needed a team who obviously had the chops to come in and do that, right? And there was a Sequoia podcast that I was listening to. He's the head of reinforcement learning over at Cursor, and he was talking about what Cursor has already started to do, where they're using their own models to start to work on trying to train the next model. And I think this just kind of gives them a leg up where, unlike, an Anthropic where, yes, they're dominant in code and those verifiable domains, they're still trying to cover such a wide, like, and broad knowledge base, where with Cursor is very specific. And I don't think any of us here, when we've coded or whatever, have used Grok like that. We maybe have played with it or toyed with it, but we haven't used it like that. I think that's going to end up changing. And the reason why I think that's going to end up changing is because with Composer 3, what they were saying the other day at their dev conference is they dropped the open source model. And because now they have access to all that compute from OpenAI, not OpenAI, SpaceX, they're able to train their own base model from scratch. And so, like, the performance of that is like, I think, once again, because it's hyper focused on a single domain, is like crazy. I think the other thing too is like potential enterprise contracts as well. But I think the hidden gem for all of this is I think Elon saw what they were building with Origin. So Origin is their competitor to GitHub that they just announced the other day at their dev conference. And there was a leak. There was a leak recording from an all hands at Microsoft where Satya and the head of GitHub, they called that like an existential threat because they no longer their whole thing is because so many PRs and commits are literally being written by these AI agents. Why can't these platforms like Claude Code, Cursor just have their own kind of like kind of repo source code kind of, like environment similar to GitHub. And that's what Origin is becoming. And if that happens, bro, just think about the number of people that use Cursor and think about the data advantage that's going to give SpaceX and where that compounds just across all of their different businesses, right?
Mm.
And so I genuinely think I think your framing of this potentially being a WhatsApp and Instagram, like this may end like, and maybe I'm just drinking a Kool-Aid, but I think because of those reasons, it's a strong acquisition. And what, it's 30 times revenue. So
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad valuation. 30 times revenue is not horrible.
compared to some of these other companies, bro,
Yeah, no,
some of
that's
these
not
other
bad.
companies got crazy.
For sure, for sure. That's not bad. When you put it in framing like that, it was more reasonable. Man, well, shout out to the founders, man. That's a hell of an exit. What Cursor is what, a 2-year-old company? What, or a 3-year-old company? It's not that
Bro,
old, right?
3.
3
And
years,
you know
three,
what's crazy?
and they all getting
2020.
billions, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think
That's what's
each
up.
one
That's what's
was
up.
at,
That's
at
crazy.
minimum was taking home like 2.5.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
But
they basically have
what
unlimited money at this point. So what's next after that? I mean, you could chill for a little bit, but
well, because
surely
it's stock,
you want to do something
there's
else.
probably a lockup. There's probably a lockup.
Yeah, I mean,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah, sure. But
I'm not leaving SpaceX.
you already, yeah, this serves as a lockup. But before the acquisition, you almost were already living with you already probably felt like you were damn near living with unlimited money. Like, because they were doing so well. I mean, they are doing well. I use Cursor. My usage in Cursor has gone up a tremendous amount. I mean, I think the first time I used it, yeah, it was pretty new. I think maybe like 2 years, like 2 years ago. And I was like, this is pretty nice. This is pretty good. Like, and I wasn't even paying for it. I was using the free version. So I would hit the limits and then I would
Really?
stop. Yeah, at first I would just hit the limits and then I would stop and I'm like, okay, I'm good. And then and that was enough to like to that was enough to get a lot done with my at one of my engineering jobs that I had. I didn't even have to pay for it at first. And then and then and back then this was about two and a half, like this is about 2 years ago. That that was when people were thinking that AI wasn't gonna be good enough for coding. And they were
Mm,
wrong. I knew they were wrong back then, but and then now I use Cursor every single day. I use Cursor, I use it every single day, and I think it is really, really good. It is really, really good, and you really feel like you could do a million things. I mean, and I think that with all the MCPs, whether it's linear, Sentry, and all these different it's insane what these things are capable of doing. You could have them
mhm,
pull linear tickets. You can have them pull Sentry issues automatically. You could just type in there and say, fix all the Sentry issues that came in the last hour. And they can just start fixing all that stuff. You could say, review all the PRs. You could just talk normally and have it do stuff, even stuff that you don't know how to do. So I think that's the part that's
mhm,
also a whole nother level. So yeah, shout out to those founders. So it's a crazy acquisition. And yeah, I'm sure they're gonna keep working and whatnot, but it's unprecedented. That's a huge acquisition. We haven't seen something that's probably one of the biggest acquisitions in history, given how long the company has. It probably is the biggest one,
Mhm.
mhm.
given how old the company is.
Yeah, I think another thing we didn't really touch on too is the fact that Cursor is a harness. You know what I mean? Like it's been model agnostic for a very long time until recently when they started building their own models. But I think what really made Cursor special is underneath the hood how they were orchestrating all the different tool calls, the memory, the rules, like you name it, right? And I think once again, like when you get that team plus that type of product, plus proven revenue, plus customers that love the product, it's a very interesting surface area because I could easily see that harness expanding into other domains, right? Where like it would not surprise me if, very similar to what we have seen with Anthropic, where they started with chat, went to Claude Code and then Cowork, obviously XAI, they have their chat product. With Cursor, they now have their code product. Expect in these enterprises for XAI to start to you potentially roll out some type of co-work product because it's a very similar harness. So I think that market is going to heat up. But nah, one before we switch topics, one one cheat code that I wanted to share that I came across. I was sharing it earlier, with YouTube, but there was this company, Taste Labs. They're going after the whole AI slop and like what does it mean to, be able to verify something that can't be checked. And so, for example, something that can be checked, you know, are the things that AI has been getting good at, which is code, math, things like that. But in their blog post that I recommend people go out and like check, she broke down how they're going to be like attacking this problem. And they're already working with like Gemini, DeepMind, Anthropic, OpenAI on like helping, improve their models in this category. But it was like the way she framed it was like first going after the floor. So she was like, there are just things that we know that these models are just like bad at, and she said, if you take something like creative writing by itself as a whole, it looks like it can't be verified. But if you break it down into subtasks such as like punctuation, syntax, like whatever, those individual components by themselves can be verified. And I just thought that was a very interesting approach. And it's actually something like when I've been working on some of my coding products, like, for work and things of that nature, I've been applying and like the results have been like marginally better, like, if I'm gonna be honest. And then the other thing that I wanted to call out that she was talking about too was, yeah, in this era of checkability, because Anthropic and a lot of I believe Codex rolled out something similar, but they're rolling out these 2 features, so goals and loops, which essentially is just the agent continuously working until it achieves something. And Dario had talked about this, and I think Sam talked about this recently too, but it's like you need to give these things a rubric. And so like the equation that, she kind of spoke about was checkability equals specificability plus how narrow can you, or how narrow and cheap can you make the checkability. And so by checkability, what that means is, can you write down concretely what good looks like so you can hand it off to a model? As product people, we already do that because we write specs, right? And kind of the what I thought was very interesting about like what makes a good spec, it was like literally she outlined 5 criteria. So like what is your target? What's the success criteria? What's the negative? So what must it not do? What's the context? And then what is the check? And then the where the checkability piece comes in is basically, rather if you're coding or whatever, having a model or just a task in Claude Code or whatever, that's like a grader. So after it does a task, basically have the grader run that task against the spec that you created. And it basically just loops through those different conditions to, check against it. And when I say, bro, like it does make a huge difference in just like one, your token usage, but two, the quality of the output. Yeah, it's something that I've started to do with a lot of my projects as well. And so I definitely recommend, folks listening to the pod, like if you are building these projects, it can be code, non-code. Yeah, looking a little bit more into that, but these specs are pretty straightforward.
Man, I'm gonna check out Taste Lab. I'm not familiar with them.
I'm really excited about all this stuff. I think it feels like a portal has opened up. I don't know how to describe it. I think living in this world where, especially for white collar work, we have all these different tools. Of course, engineers are getting a ton of value out of it. I think there's another level where computer use is on a higher level than people think. I think that the loops and the goals features are really nice. And the only one other thing I want to say in regards to the cursor acquisition is that XAI, they have their Grok build model, which nobody mentions because I think it's just not that good yet. But they have a Grok terminal thing, which is their initial version of the initial versions of Cloud Code or Codex. Because remember, those started off as CLI command line tools. And I think buying Cursor is a way to kind of jump the line a bit too, because Cursor is, to me, Cursor and Claude and Codex are all in competition. Those are all a similar tool. But I think that Cursor needs to get more access to the computer. Otherwise, Claude and Codex will take it to like essentially Claude and ChatGPT, they're getting ready to like take over the whole thing. The whole thing. What I mean by that is, even with Claude, right? You have the chat interface, you have Codex, Codex, Cloud Code. And then you also have Cowork. All those things could do almost everything on your computer. And as they get better, it's essentially this new way of controlling your entire computer, which essentially will help you control and manage your life because you can connect your calendar, your messages, and everything else. So yeah,
Brylan thing dropped off.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah. Man, yeah, these tools are getting crazy. It's crazy because I feel like if you go back for our listeners, right? If they go back and listen to the pod, I feel like we started talking about these AI tools immediately, like when they hit, right? Like we was on top of Chat GPT immediately when it first came out.
Hold on, it was the image one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
2023.
Yep.
Yeah. What was the name of that? It's been so long. I totally forgot what it's called.
I don't even remember, bro. Y'all remember Bart? Was it Bart? Was that Google shit? I ain't heard nothing about
Bruh.
Bart with it. I ain't heard nothing about that, man. I ain't heard nothing about Gemini even either. Even I know Gemini. I know Gemini pop. No, I know Gemini still popping.
I
Hey,
wonder what we said about Bart.
Probably that it was gonna be dead. We already knew. We already knew where the shit was going. Me and you was already aligned. Brylan was the one that was like, "Chat GPT gonna be out of here." He was
Yeah.
talking crazy. He was talking crazy back then.
hey man,
Brylan is
I
still
had to come
talking
around.
crazy. Brylan
Yeah.
is still talking
100%.
crazy.
100%. I mean, I've shifted a little bit, but I mean, the narrative is still the narrative. The characters have changed, but the narrative is the narrative.
I like
respect
Google. I like Google. I like Google. I like Google, but yeah, they fumbled AI. They fumbled AI. They really should be leading AI. They shouldn't be. They
No,
should
they
be
didn't, bro.
leading it.
No, they
Yes,
didn't, bro.
they did. They did. They did.
No, they didn't, bro. No, they didn't,
They
bro.
did. Maybe
No,
okay.
they didn't, bro.
Where are they at?
How so?
Where are they?
Yeah,
Why,
yeah.
why are they not in the conversation?
They are in the conversation. I think there was an article that came out recently that ChatGPT's market share dropped below 50% for the first time ever, and part of it
Due
is
to Gemini?
because Gemini is approaching. Gemini is
So
like, I think Gemini
it's-
was like 27% or something, bro.
so I want to say I did a normal thing. I bought a Google Home, the Mini. I liked it. I just bought it,
Yeah.
and I don't have it yet. It's on the way. And then I realized I was like, wait, hold on. I could have got like a HomePod Mini, like the new HomePod Minis. But then I thought about it, and I was thinking it came down to the model that's powering it that made me decide what to get. Because on one hand, the HomePod Mini is connected to my Apple devices, so my MacBook, my iPhone, everything else, my Apple Watch. But on the other hand, though, it's powered by Siri. So then it's like, should I get that, or should I get the Google Home one that's powered by Google and Gemini? And I ended up getting the Gemini one.
Mm-hmm.
And it started making me thinking about this future. And this is probably not this pod is probably not the pod to go in depth on this, but this started making me think about the future in the ecosystem and how these AI assistants are going to be connected. Things are going to be, our lives are going to be so much easier to manage. It's the way, like when it all comes together, it's just going to be easy.
This is the key word is come together, but I think part of the come together is like very if you remember during like the pandemic when crypto was taking off, like the part that made it hard for some of these other platforms like Metabase, et cetera, to take off versus like a Coinbase was how difficult it was to onboard. You had to protect your own keys, all that versus
Right.
like with Coinbase, I can just go sign up with Google.
Right.
What is that going to look like in that future? Because at the end of the day, I do agree with you that it is going to make life easier. I can't be speaking so freely on how my life has become very easy based off of my setup.
I understand.
And so I'm
Let's push to come back.
I'm definitely living in the future. But that's
Same.
because I set it
Same.
up.
Same.
Once again, it's because you set it up. Who's going to do the setup?
And we still got, you know, it's crazy. I bet we both still have more automations on our mind. I have more on my mind. I just haven't got to it yet. I'm like, because once you get that skill of being able to to set up these automations, now everything you do is like, wait, hold on, my mind is 10 times freer because of all this shit. And I just keep thinking, we are literally going to be floated. Our consciousness is on one hand, yeah, we got to wrap this up, but I'll say this. On one hand, there's a lower consciousness out there, and it's easy to fall into that because there's a lot going on in the world, bad things, social media, bad economies, job losses, or whatever. And then there's a higher consciousness, wealth, abundance, automation, AI, etc. Just it's trillion-dollar companies, multi-billion-dollar outcomes within a couple of years. And people who are embracing AI and all these different things and automation and efficiency, etc., they're going to have so much more cognitive space. And
Facts.
you're going to be
Facts.
floating. You probably won't even, in 10 years, you won't even feel your body. You'll just be floating. You feel like you're flying, bro. Like,
Hold up.
bro, I'm telling you, you don't
So
feel
so
like you
so you know what's crazy?
floating.
This is kind of I actually had this aha moment today when I was at the gym today with Luke. If I don't know if y'all
Yeah,
ever been to the gym, you ever been to the gym? I'm the type of nigga where like I ain't trying to be around for 2 to 3 hours. Like
yeah,
I got
facts,
30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes if I include a
facts.
nice little stretch and
Yeah,
after stretch, but I'm
yeah,
not there that long.
facts.
Bro, me and Lou, we looked up, we probably had been there for like 30 minutes or whatever. Mind you, we already had did like 6 workouts in it. We not taking
Yeah,
no
yeah,
breaks.
yeah, yeah.
And
Same. Yeah,
we look up, and I'm like, bro, most people in the gym been on the same station the whole time.
bro.
People aren't using their time efficiently.
No, no.
No.
And so apply that
Good
to
analogy,
what you're
actually.
talking about.
Good
Apply
analogy,
that to
actually.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, they'll take a 5-minute break between sets. They'll be on the ab machine. Sweating. They'll be on the ab machine sweating. They'll take 5-minute break on the ab machine. They'll spend 30 minutes doing 3 sets on the ab machine, and they'll scroll their phone. And it's like you don't need to rest. Like you don't need that much rest.
So apply that same thing to what you're
Yes,
talking about, bro.
right. So that gap, that wealth gap people are talking about, I see what's going to happen. It's going to be people who are literally moving at a different speed in life. And if you're not moving at that speed, it's going to seem the gap is going to be it's you're not going to even be able to, you won't, because it won't seem like other people are moving fast, but they are moving way faster than you think. And we are those
Facts.
people. Everybody on this
Facts.
call is, and
Hold up,
hopefully
hold
people
up,
who are
hold up, hold up,
listening
hold up,
are those people
hold up.
too.
Because we've all watched track. We've all
Yeah.
watched track. We
Yeah.
watch niggas like Usain Bolt, Tyson Gay, you name it. When they run, they look like they're floating.
Yes. Yes.
That's what's gonna happen. It's
Yeah.
gonna look like we being lazy. It's gonna
Bro,
look like we
it's
whole time you don't know.
running a crazy circle. It's not gonna. It's. I'm already seeing it. So we got to talk more about this on the pod and off the pod.
Correct.
Facts.
So
Facts. Y'all want to end it there?
Yeah. Let's do that.
yeah.